My name is Captain Tom Callahan, and for 32 years, the wail of a siren wasn't just a sound, it was a summons, a call to step into the heart of chaos while others were fleeing. Being a firefighter, it wasn't a job I fell into. It was a path I chose with every fiber of my being, a legacy passed down from my father, whose soot-stained helmet sat like a sacred relic on the mantelpiece of my childhood home. My faith, well, it was like the old, reliable pumper truck at the station. Always there, dependable, something I believed in fundamentally, but perhaps didn't inspect too closely under the hood too often. I believed in a higher power, a guiding hand, especially in those moments when you're walking into an inferno and every instinct is screaming at you to turn back. My prayers were usually quick, foxhole-style entreaties for the safety of my crew, for the victims we were racing towards, for the strength to do what needed to be done. I saw the raw end of life more often than most, the fragility of it, the suddenness with which it could be extinguished. That kind of exposure either hardens you or makes you seek something more. For me, it was a bit of both. I was a practical man, focused on the tangible, the immediate threat, the rescue plan. The philosophical debates, the deep theological dives, those were for quieter professions. My understanding of good and evil was forged in the heat of burning buildings, in the desperate cries for help, in the grateful tears of those we pulled from the brink. The good was saving a life, protecting property, bringing a child back to their parents. The evil was the fire itself, relentless, destructive, uncaring. The men and women I served with, they were my family. The bond forged in the face of shared danger is unlike any other, a silent understanding that you trust the person next to you with your life and they trust you with theirs. That camaraderie, that loyalty, was a tangible part of my belief system. Yet, sometimes, in the dead of night at the station, after a particularly grueling call, a flicker of something else would stir. Lying on a narrow cot, the smell of smoke still clinging to my clothes, I'd stare at the ceiling and wonder about the bigger picture. What was the point of all this struggle, this constant battle against destruction? Was there a design, a reason, or were we just tiny figures battling random sparks in an indifferent universe? These weren't thoughts I voiced often, if ever. In our line of work, doubt can be a dangerous companion. You need conviction. You need to believe in what you're doing, in your training, in your crew. So, I'd push those fleeting moments of unease aside, chalk them up to exhaustion. My faith was in my ability, in my team, in the proven protocols that kept us as safe as possible in an inherently unsafe profession. This particular shift started like any other, the familiar routine of equipment checks, training drills, the easy banter that filled the station house between calls. The sky outside was a clear, indifferent blue, belying the potential for tragedy that always lurked just beneath the surface of a city's daily life. I believed in doing my job to the best of my ability, in courage under fire, in the inherent goodness of trying to help others. That was my code, my practical theology. I thought I understood sacrifice. I saw it every day in the willingness of my crew to risk their own safety. Little did I know, my understanding of sacrifice, of life, of faith itself, was about to be tested in a crucible far hotter than any physical fire, a crucible that would burn away everything I thought I knew and reveal a reality I could never have imagined in my most profound or terrifying dreams. The call came in during the late afternoon, a jangling alarm that cut through the mundane drone of the station, instantly electrifying the atmosphere. A multi-story apartment complex, old brickwork, the kind that burns hot and fast once it gets going, and the dispatcher's voice was tight with urgency. Multiple reports, heavy smoke, and the words that always sent a chill down a firefighter's spine. Possible entrapment, children reported inside. My heart kicked into a higher gear. That was the one. The call that stripped away all the routine, all the weariness, and focused every ounce of your being. We were out of the bay in under a minute, sirens screaming, the city a blur of receding normalcy as we raced towards the unfolding disaster. The plume of black smoke was visible from miles away, a greasy, angry column punching into the sky, a stark signal of the inferno that awaited us. As we got closer, the scene was one of controlled chaos. Police were cordoning off streets. Panicked residents were huddled on sidewalks, their faces etched with fear and desperation, pointing, shouting. Flames were already licking out of windows on the third and fourth floors, the roar of the fire a hungry beast. I was first officer on the initial rig, so command was mine, until a battalion chief arrived. Briefing my crew as we pulled on our SCBA masks, the plan was clear. Search and rescue primary. Attack the fire secondary. Harrison Miller, with me, primary search. Third floor, that's where the reports are. Diaz, engine 2, get a line in. Protect the stairwell. Move. The heat hit us like a physical blow as we entered the building, a suffocating wave that stole the breath even through our masks. Smoke was already banking down, thick and acrid, visibility near zero. We moved by touch, by memory of building layouts, by shouted commands. The roar of the fire was deafening, punctuated by the cracking of timbers and the hiss of water from the hoses already in operation outside. "Fire department, call out if you can hear me," I yelled, my voice muffled by the mask, a near futile gesture in the overwhelming noise. We swept rooms, low and fast, feeling along walls, under beds, in closets. The conditions were deteriorating rapidly. The heat was intensifying, the smoke becoming a choking, blinding blanket. Then, a faint cry. "I hear something!" Miller shouted, his voice strained. We moved towards the sound, deeper into the labyrinth of smoke-filled rooms. We found them in a back bedroom. 2 small children, huddled together in a closet, terrified but alive. A surge of adrenaline, of pure, focused purpose, coursed through me. "Got 'em?" I radioed. 2 pediatric, conscious, making our way out. Getting them out was a new level of hell. The fire was now raging through the hallway, cutting off our primary exit. The floorboards felt spongy underfoot, a terrifying sign of imminent collapse. I took one child, Miller the other. We moved through the searing heat, shielding their small bodies with our own. The smoke was so thick, I could barely see Miller a few feet in front of me. Debris was falling. The building groaned like a dying animal. We reached a window, the only viable escape route now. "Break it out!" I yelled. Miller smashed the glass with his axe. Outside, ladders were already being raised, but it felt like an eternity. I handed my precious cargo to another firefighter reaching through the window, then turned to help Miller with the second child. Just as he passed the child to safety, there was a colossal tearing sound from above. The ceiling directly over us gave way in a sickening rush of flame and falling timbers. I shoved Miller towards the window. "Go! Get out!" He scrambled, barely making it. I turned, looking for any space, any chance, but there was none. A massive beam, wreathed in fire, came crashing down. I remember a blinding, searing pain, a sense of unbearable weight, and then nothing. The roar of the fire, the shouts, the fear, it all just stopped. The world, my world, vanished into an abrupt, silent, and utterly profound darkness. It was an absolute cessation of all sensation, a complete void where thought itself seemed to extinguish. My last fleeting awareness was not of my own peril, but a desperate, silent hope that the children, that Miller, had made it clear. Then, only blackness, infinite and still. The blackness was absolute, a perfect void, devoid of light, sound, or any sensation. It wasn't like being in a dark room. It was the absence of everything, a state of non-being that felt simultaneously infinite and instantaneous. For a duration that had no measure, my consciousness, or what remained of it, simply floated in this profound emptiness. There was no fear, no thought, just a complete stillness, a cessation of the struggle that had been my final moments. Then, gradually, subtly, like a whisper in a vast, silent auditorium, an awareness began to stir. It wasn't a return to physical sensation, but a gentle coalescing of self, a recognition that I still existed, albeit in a form I couldn't comprehend. I felt a lightness, a buoyancy, as if the immense weight of my physical body and the burdens of life had been lifted. There was a sensation of movement, not through space as I knew it, but a gentle, upward drift, like a bubble rising through an endless ocean. As this awareness sharpened, the oppressive nature of the blackness began to recede, not by the introduction of physical light, but by an internal shift. And then I could perceive. Below me, as if viewed from a great height yet with perfect clarity, was the scene I had just departed. The burning apartment building, a raging inferno against the darkening sky, the flashing lights of emergency vehicles, the ant-like figures of firefighters battling the blaze. And there, amidst the charred and smoking debris of the collapsed section where I had last stood, was a still, unmoving form, partially buried, undeniably me. My turnout gear, blackened and torn, the helmet askew. It was my physical shell. Yet, as I observed this scene, there was no horror, no panic, no grief for that fallen body. Instead, a profound sense of detachment, an almost clinical peace, washed over me. The Tom Callahan who had charged into that building, who had felt the searing pain and the crushing weight, was down there. The I that was now observing was something else, somewhere else, free. The sounds of the firefight, the shouts, the roar of the flames, reached me but were muffled, distant, as if filtered through layers of reality. The intense, life-or-death urgency that had consumed me mere moments before now seemed almost dreamlike from this new vantage point. I saw my crew, their faces grim, still working, still fighting. I felt a pang of concern for them, a wave of the camaraderie that had defined my life, but it was without the visceral fear I would have felt before. I wanted to tell them I was okay, in a strange, new way, but I had no voice, no means to bridge the gap between my current state and their physical reality. As I hovered, an unseen spectator, the immediate spiritual atmosphere around the disaster site began to feel charged. A palpable coldness, unrelated to the ambient temperature, started to emanate from the chaos and destruction. The air itself seemed to thicken, and from the periphery of my perception, shadowy, ill-defined forms began to materialize. They were not solid, more like coalesced darkness, writhing and shifting at the edges of the smoke and flames. They seemed drawn to the suffering, the fear, the raw, negative energy of the scene. A primal sense of unease, a spiritual dread far deeper than any physical fear I had ever known, began to stir within me. These were not human adversaries. They felt like something ancient, something malevolent, feeding on the despair. Their presence was oppressive, a psychic weight that sought to pull me down, to draw me into their shadowy domain. Just as a sense of desolation threatened to overwhelm me, a new phenomenon began. Far in the perceived distance, a tiny pinprick of light appeared. It was infinitesimally small at first, yet it possessed an intensity, a purity, that instantly contrasted with the gloom. This light was different from any I had ever seen, not the harsh glare of a spotlight or the destructive orange of the fire. This light was alive. It pulsed, with an incredible warmth, a gentle yet irresistible power. As it grew, expanding steadily, it began to push back the encroaching cold, to dispel the oppressive shadows. The shadowy entities I had sensed seemed to recoil from it, to shrink away as if its very radiance was anathema to their nature. The light wasn't just something to be seen, it was something to be felt. It radiated an unconditional love, a profound peace, a sense of absolute safety that washed over my disembodied consciousness like a healing balm. The fear, the unease, the lingering attachment to the scene below all began to dissolve. An irresistible pull, a deep, soul yearning, drew me towards this magnificent, beckoning presence. The burning building, my lifeless body, the shadowy figures, all faded into insignificance as I moved, or was drawn, gently but inexorably, towards the heart of this glorious, welcoming, and utterly transformative light. The immersion in the light was absolute. It was not merely an absence of darkness, but a positive, vibrant presence, a substance of pure love and infinite peace that permeated every fiber of my being, or what now constituted my being. The journey towards its source, if it could be called a journey, was without effort, a joyful surrender to an irresistible current of warmth and acceptance. All remnants of earthly pain, fear, and confusion were washed away, replaced by a serenity so profound it felt like the very essence of existence itself. Within this boundless ocean of luminosity, a figure began to coalesce, or rather, to become discernible as the focal point, the very heart from which this incredible radiance emanated. He was humanoid in form, yet his being seemed to be woven from the light itself, simultaneously distinct and inseparable from it. His features, while not sharply defined in a physical sense, conveyed an overwhelming sense of majesty, infinite wisdom, and a compassion so tender it brought an answering surge of emotion from within me, an emotion that felt like a homecoming. His eyes, if one could call them eyes, were like windows into eternity, holding all the knowledge of the universe. Yet they gazed upon me with a personal, intimate understanding that saw into the deepest, most hidden recesses of my soul. And in that gaze, there was no judgment, no condemnation, no anger, only a pure, unconditional, unwavering love that was more real, more potent, more transformative than anything I had ever experienced or could have conceived. In that instant, with a certainty that bypassed all thought and resonated directly with my spirit, I knew him. It was the divine, the creator, the source of all that is. The name that my human mind might have assigned, be it God or another sacred title, felt inadequate, a mere label for a reality so vast, so loving, so utterly beyond human definition. Yet, the recognition was absolute. Awe, so profound it was almost a blissful agony, swept through me. I felt an overwhelming instinctive urge to prostrate myself, not from a place of fear or servility, but from a spontaneous outpouring of reverence, humility, and gratitude in the presence of such ineffable purity, power, and love. Thomas, his communication was not sound, for there was no air to carry vibrations, no ears to receive them. It was a direct transmission of thought, of knowing, that bloomed within my consciousness with perfect clarity, imbued with his very essence. It was gentle, yet it carried an authority that was the foundation of all existence. Hearing my name, Thomas, spoken, or rather, known by him, felt like a profound affirmation, a recreation, as if I were being called into a truer, more essential state of being. Before I could even attempt to formulate a response, to articulate the overwhelming flood of emotions and realizations, the nature of the experience shifted once more. The radiant light around us seemed to transform into a living canvas, and upon this canvas, my entire earthly life began to unfold. It was not like watching a film or recalling a memory. It was far more immersive. I was reliving each moment, yet simultaneously observing it from a detached, all-knowing perspective, with a complete understanding of my own motivations, the hidden thoughts and feelings of others involved, and the intricate, often unseen, ripple effects of every action, word, and even thought. My earliest childhood experiences replayed with vivid clarity. The simple joys, the childhood fears, the first lessons in love and loss, the dawning awareness of the world around me. I saw the influences that shaped me, the paths taken and not taken. Then came my decision to become a firefighter, the arduous training, the pride of wearing the uniform, the adrenaline of the first few calls. I witnessed my years of service, the countless fires battled, the lives saved, the camaraderie forged in the heat of shared danger, the quiet moments of satisfaction after a successful rescue, the faces of those I had helped, their gratitude, a warm, remembered glow. I saw the moments of courage, not just the dramatic ones, but the everyday courage of facing the unknown, of putting others before myself, of pushing through fear and exhaustion. I saw acts of kindness, of compassion, of genuine service, and these moments shone with a particular brightness in the review. But the life review was an instrument of absolute truth, and it did not shy away from the less noble aspects of my existence. It showed me my failings, my shortcomings, my moments of impatience, anger, or fear. I saw the times I had been too quick to judge, too slow to forgive, too wrapped up in my own concerns to truly see the needs of others. I witnessed my own pride, my stubbornness, the instances where ego had overshadowed compassion. My professional life, my dedication as a firefighter, was examined in this same light. I saw the genuine desire to help, to save, to make a difference. But I also saw the times when perhaps the thrill of the action, the adrenaline rush, had played a part, or when weariness and cynicism had crept in, dulling the edge of my compassion. The review was not focused on assigning blame or meting out punishment. The overwhelming feeling accompanying these revelations was not of condemnation from the divine figure, but of a deep, poignant understanding from my own perspective. It was the sorrow of missed opportunities for greater love, for deeper connection, for more profound service. The divine figure remained present throughout this entire, panoramic reliving of my life, his love and compassion an unwavering, palpable constant, even as I cringed internally at some of the less flattering scenes. It was like having my soul laid bare before the purest love imaginable, a love that saw all, understood all, and yet continued to love without reservation. The review extended beyond my actions to the impact they had on others. I experienced, as if it were my own, the fear of a child I had pulled from a burning room, the relief of a mother reunited with her family, the frustration of a colleague with whom I had argued, the quiet despair of someone I had, perhaps unintentionally, overlooked or dismissed. It was an overwhelming lesson in interconnectedness, in the profound and often unacknowledged ways our lives touch and affect one another. And through it all, his loving presence was there, a silent, infinitely patient witness, allowing me to see myself, my life, my soul, as it truly was, in the pure, unfiltered, and ultimately healing light of his eternal truth, preparing me for the deeper revelations that were yet to come. The life review continued, its focus sharpening, moving beyond mere actions to the intricate tapestry of my thoughts, intentions, and the deeply ingrained beliefs that had governed my earthly existence. It was like watching the unseen gears and springs of my own psyche at work, often for the first time with true, unbiased clarity. I saw the bedrock of my conventional faith, the belief in a higher power, the adherence to a certain moral code, the performance of religious duties when I remembered or felt inclined. It was sincere, in its own way, but the review revealed its shallowness, its lack of true, transformative depth. My faith had been more of a safety net, a set of inherited beliefs, than a vibrant, living relationship with the divine. I witnessed countless moments of prayer, the hurried pleas for safety before charging into a blaze, the rote recitations at family gatherings, the occasional, more reflective moments of gratitude. But the review highlighted how often these prayers were rooted in self-interest, in seeking divine intervention for my own needs or the needs of those immediately around me, rather than in a selfless offering of love, a deep yearning for his will, or a genuine desire for spiritual growth and understanding. The divine figure gently, lovingly, exposed the transactional nature of much of my previous faith. I had, perhaps unconsciously, viewed my good deeds, my acts of service as a firefighter, even my occasional religious observances, as deposits in a spiritual bank account, from which I expected withdrawals of blessings, protection, and divine favor. The idea of grace, of unmerited, unconditional love, had been an abstract theological concept, not a lived, internalized reality. He showed me the subtle but pervasive influence of fear in my spiritual life, fear of punishment, fear of oblivion, fear of not measuring up to some unseen divine standard. This fear, he revealed, had often been a greater motivator than pure love or spontaneous joy in my relationship with him. Thomas. His communication flowed into my consciousness, warm and illuminating. Your service to others, your bravery in the face of danger, These were expressions of the divine spark within you, and they brought forth much good. But true faith, the faith that liberates and transforms, is not built upon a foundation of duty performed or fear assuaged. It is built upon a foundation of pure, unadulterated love, my love for you, and your answering love for me and for all my creation. Visions then began to intersperse with the life review, illustrating these profound truths. I saw souls whose lives had been outwardly unremarkable by worldly standards, yet who radiated an astonishing spiritual brilliance because their every action, every thought, was infused with selfless love and a deep, trusting communion with Him. I saw others who had meticulously followed every religious law, performed every prescribed ritual, yet whose spiritual light was dim, occluded by pride, by judgment of others, by a rigid adherence to the letter of the law that missed its loving spirit. He showed me that religious practices, rituals, and doctrines, while potentially helpful as signposts or aids to devotion, could also become barriers if they were mistaken for the destination itself. The true temple, he conveyed, was the human heart, and the truest worship was a life lived in conscious, loving alignment with His will. My understanding of His will was also profoundly expanded. It wasn't about following a prescribed set of ancient rules, but about embodying divine qualities, compassion, forgiveness, kindness, humility, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to truth and justice, tempered always by mercy. The concept of sin, as I had understood it, was reframed. It was less about breaking divine laws, and more about actions, thoughts, and intentions that created separation from Him, separation from others, separation from one's own true, divine self. The consequences of such sins were not punishments meted out by an angry God, but the natural, inherent spiritual results of moving out of alignment with the universal laws of love and harmony. The life review then showed me the countless opportunities I had missed for deeper spiritual connection, not just in formal prayer, but in everyday moments, opportunities to see His presence in the beauty of nature, in the innocent eyes of a child, in the quiet courage of ordinary people facing adversity, in the profound stillness between thoughts. I had been so focused on the external, the dramatic, the demands of my profession, that I had often overlooked the sacred that was woven into the very fabric of the mundane. The regret I felt was not a self-flagellating guilt, but a poignant sorrow, a recognition of a richness of experience, a depth of connection that I had unknowingly bypassed. Yet, even this sorrow was held within the infinite embrace of His love, a love that understood my human limitations, my spiritual immaturity, and that offered not condemnation, but an invitation to deeper understanding and growth. The purpose of this unsparing review, I was coming to understand, was not to dwell on past failings, but to strip away all illusion, all self-deception, to prepare me for the profound message He was about to impart, a message that would redefine my entire understanding of life, death, and the ultimate purpose of existence. The light surrounding us seemed to intensify further, becoming almost unbearably brilliant, yet still without any hint of pain, only an increasing sense of being immersed in pure, concentrated love and truth. The life review, with its detailed examination of my past, began to recede, its lessons absorbed deep within my consciousness. Now, the central divine figure, God, began to impart a more direct and universal message, one that transcended my individual experience and spoke to the condition of all humanity. Thomas, His knowing filled me, you have seen your life, your strengths, your failings, all bathed in the light of truth. Understand now that this light, this love, is available to every soul at every moment. It is the very essence of existence. The suffering, the confusion, the darkness that so often pervades the earthly realm arises not from my absence, but from humanity's collective and individual forgetting of this fundamental truth, from the choice to live as if separate from me and from one another. He then showed me visions of Earth, not as a physical globe, but as a vast, interconnected web of consciousness, a shimmering tapestry of souls. I saw points of brilliant light where love, compassion, and wisdom flourished, and areas of dimness or shadow where fear, hatred, and ignorance held sway. He illustrated how every thought, every word, every action, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, sent ripples through this vast energetic web, affecting not only the individual, but the collective whole. Selfless acts of kindness, prayers offered with a pure heart, moments of genuine forgiveness, these created luminous waves that uplifted and healed. Conversely, acts of cruelty, thoughts of judgment, words spoken in anger, these created discordant vibrations that contributed to the collective shadow. The fires you fought on Earth, Thomas, he continued, drawing a powerful analogy from my own life experience. The physical conflagrations that consume homes and lives are but pale reflections of the unseen fires that rage within human hearts. The fires of greed, of anger, of unforgiveness, of pride, of fear. These are the true destroyers, the source of humanity's deepest woes. And just as you bravely entered burning buildings to rescue those trapped within, so too are my children called to be spiritual firefighters, to bravely enter the burning spaces within themselves and within the world, armed not with water and axe, but with love, compassion, and truth, to extinguish these inner flames. This was a profound reframing of my life's work. My role as a firefighter had been a physical metaphor for a deeper, spiritual calling that applied to all souls. He then addressed the purpose of life on Earth, a question that had often hovered at the edges of my consciousness during quiet moments. The earthly sojourn is a schoolroom, a training ground for the soul, Thomas. It is a precious, though often challenging opportunity for souls to learn, to grow, to evolve, to remember their divine nature, and to choose love over fear, unity over separation, light over darkness. The trials, the hardships, the very limitations of physical existence are not punishments, but catalysts for this growth, opportunities to forge spiritual strength, to cultivate compassion, to awaken to the eternal truths. He spoke of the illusion of death. What you experienced as death was merely a transition, a shedding of the physical garment. The soul, your true essence, is eternal, indestructible. There is no true ending, only a change of form, a continuation of the journey. Fear of death is one of the greatest shadows that binds humanity, preventing souls from living fully, loving freely, and embracing their divine potential. Then, he imparted the core of the shocking message that the video title alluded to, a message that was both incredibly simple and devastatingly profound in its implications for how life should be lived. The most important truth, the one I desire all my children to understand and to live by, is this: you are all infinitely loved, beyond measure, beyond condition. Your worth is inherent, not dependent on your achievements, your possessions, your religious affiliations, or your perceived goodness. My love is the ground of your being. And because you are so loved, you are called to love. Love is the key, Thomas. It is the answer to every question, the solution to every problem, the healing for every wound. Love me. Love yourselves as the divine beings you truly are, and love one another, without exception, without reservation. This is the fulfillment of all law, the purpose of all existence. He showed me how this simple yet radical commandment of love, if truly embraced and lived by humanity, would transform the world. Wars would cease, poverty would vanish, injustice would crumble, the earth would become a reflection of the heavenly realms. But, he added, a note of divine sorrow in his communication, humanity has largely forgotten this. They seek power, pleasure, and security in external things, in illusions that can never truly satisfy the deep yearning of the soul for reunion with me, for reunion with love. They build walls between themselves, based on fear and judgment, forgetting their essential oneness. This message, while beautiful, also felt shocking in its direct contradiction to so much of what I had witnessed and participated in on Earth. The divisions, the strife, the emphasis on external achievements rather than internal spiritual development. It was a call for a complete reordering of priorities, a radical shift in consciousness. He was not condemning humanity, but lovingly, urgently, calling it back to its true nature, its true purpose. The dialogue with the divine figure moved towards the purpose of my return, a concept I was still struggling to fully accept, given the profound peace and love I was experiencing. The thought of leaving this state of bliss was daunting, yet his wisdom was undeniable. "Thomas," he communicated, the essence of his being radiating both immense love and a gentle, unwavering authority. "Your earthly mission was one of brave service, putting others before yourself in the face of physical danger. Now, a different kind of service is asked of you, a spiritual service that requires a different kind of courage." I felt a wave of apprehension. How could I, a simple firefighter, undertake a spiritual mission? What could I possibly offer? "You have been shown truths that many on earth have forgotten or have never known," he continued. "You have experienced the reality of my unconditional love, the illusion of death, the true purpose of life, and the paramount importance of love and compassion. This knowledge, this direct experience, is a precious gift, not to be kept for yourself alone, but to be shared, to plant seeds of hope and awakening in the hearts of others." He then outlined, not in rigid commands, but as a loving invitation, the nature of this new mission. "You are to return, Thomas. Return to the world you knew, but see it now with new eyes, with a heart transformed by what you have witnessed here. Your task will be to simply, humbly, and truthfully share your experience. Tell them what you have seen. Tell them of my love. Tell them that life does not end with physical death. Tell them that the path to true joy and fulfillment lies not in the pursuit of worldly illusions, but in the cultivation of love within their own hearts and in their relationships with all beings." My reluctance was palpable, even in this non-physical state. But who will believe me? The thought formed, tinged with doubt. They will say I was hallucinating, that it was the trauma, a lack of oxygen to the brain. How can I convince them of something so unbelievable? He responded with infinite patience. "It is not your task to convince, Thomas, nor to force belief. Your task is only to bear witness, to speak your truth with sincerity and love. Some will be receptive, for their hearts are already searching. Others will be skeptical, and that is their free choice. Do not be discouraged by disbelief, nor puffed up by acceptance. Simply plant the seeds. The growth is in my hands and in the hearts of those who hear." He then showed me glimpses, not of specific events, but of the potential impact of such a testimony. A person finding comfort in grief, another questioning their materialistic priorities, a third being inspired to forgive a long-held grudge. These small individual transformations, he revealed, were like sparks of light that, when multiplied, could contribute to a larger awakening. "The world is in great need of hope, Thomas." His communication resonated with a profound sense of urgency. "Many souls are lost in fear, in division, in despair. Your story, and stories like it, can serve as a reminder that there is more to existence than what the physical senses perceive, that there is a higher purpose, a divine love that underpins all." He gave me an assurance that felt like an infusion of strength. "You will not be doing this alone. I will be with you. When you speak from the heart, from the truth you have experienced, my spirit will guide your words. You will be given the strength and the wisdom you need for each step of this new journey." The thought of returning was still daunting. The contrast between this realm of perfect peace and the often harsh realities of earthly life almost overwhelming. But his words, his love, his clear sense of purpose for me began to instill a new kind of courage, a willingness to embrace this unexpected, challenging, yet profoundly meaningful mission. The choice, he made clear, was still mine, for love does not coerce. But the path of service he was illuminating felt like the only path that now held any true meaning. The decision, though tinged with the sorrow of leaving his immediate presence, began to solidify within me. My time in the luminous realm was drawing to a definitive close. The central divine figure, God, prepared me for the transition back, not with a command that brooked no argument, but with a loving affirmation of the purpose he had unveiled. The reluctance to leave his immediate, overwhelming presence was still a powerful ache within my consciousness, a yearning to remain forever in that state of perfect peace and unconditional love. Yet, intertwined with this longing was a nascent, growing sense of sacred duty, a recognition of the immense privilege and responsibility of the mission I was being entrusted with. Thomas, his knowing enveloped me, filled with both tenderness for my human hesitation and a divine certainty about the path ahead. The love you have felt here, the peace that has filled your soul, these are not to be lost upon your return. They are to become the very wellspring from which you will draw strength, the unshakable foundation upon which you will build your new life of service. Carry this light within you, not as a memory, but as a living, breathing reality that can illuminate the darkness for others. He then gave me a final, crucial piece of guidance regarding the message I was to share, emphasizing its simplicity and its universality. Do not become entangled in complex doctrines or theological disputes. He cautioned gently. The core of what humanity needs to hear is profoundly simple. God is love. All are one. Life is eternal. Forgiveness is always possible. And the greatest purpose is to learn to love more perfectly, to love me, to love yourselves, and to love one another as I have loved you. Focus on these essential truths. Let your life be a testament to them. I felt a surge of emotion, a mixture of profound gratitude for his trust in me, and a deep humility in the face of the task. I will try, Lord, my soul communicated, a vow whispered from the depths of my transformed being. I will do my best to honor what you have shown me. He responded with an infusion of pure, empowering love that felt like a divine anointing, a spiritual commissioning. My grace is sufficient for you, Thomas. When you feel weak, I will be your strength. When you feel lost, I will be your guide. When you speak in my name, my truth will resonate through your words. Trust not in your own abilities, but in the limitless power of the love that now fills you and surrounds you. The gentle but inexorable pull back towards the physical realm intensified. The radiant light of his immediate presence began to subtly recede, not by diminishing, but by seemingly merging with my own inner being, becoming a permanent, internalized glow. The external visions faded, but the inner knowing, the profound peace, and the overwhelming love remained, indelibly etched upon the fabric of my soul. His final communication, as the veils of earthly consciousness began to descend like a soft curtain, was a promise and a blessing. Go forth, my beloved child, and be a beacon of hope. Fear not, for I am with you always. Share the light. Live the love. Your service continues. The transition back was not gentle. It was an abrupt, shocking, almost violent re-entry into the dense, painful confines of my physical body. One moment, I was an unbounded consciousness, immersed in divine light and love. The next, an explosion of agonizing sensation. My chest felt as if a vice was crushing it, each tortured gasp for air sending searing jolts of pain through my battered frame. The world erupted around me in a cacophony of harsh, metallic sounds, the urgent beeping of monitors, the clatter of medical instruments, the strained, anxious voices of the emergency room team. Blinding, artificial lights assaulted my newly reopened eyes. Strong hands were on me, probing, injecting, manipulating. The acrid smell of antiseptic and the coppery tang of blood filled my nostrils. It was a brutal, disorienting plunge from the sublime to the starkly, painfully real. "He's got a rhythm!" a voice shouted, laced with a mixture of urgency and disbelief. "Pressure's coming up! Callahan, can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me!" I tried to respond, to signal that I was back, that I was aware, but my body felt like an alien, unresponsive vessel. The pain was overwhelming, a relentless tide threatening to drag me under. Yet, beneath the agony, beneath the confusion, the luminous core of the NDE experience remained. The peace, the love, the unshakable knowing. I was back, not just to life, but with a life-altering purpose. The immediate aftermath was a maelstrom of medical interventions, hushed consultations just outside my room, and the tearful, incredulous faces of my family when they were finally allowed to see me. My wife, Linda, her eyes red-rimmed but shining with a fierce, desperate hope, clung to my hand as if she feared I might evaporate before her very eyes. My children, grown but still my babies in that moment, looked at me with a mixture of shock and overwhelming relief. The doctors, a team of highly skilled professionals, spoke in low tones about the miraculous nature of my recovery. They used terms like unexplained phenomena, defied medical expectations. I had been without vital signs for a significant period, they said. The damage should have been irreversible. They had done everything they could, but in the end, they confessed, my survival was something beyond their scientific comprehension. I listened, a faint smile touching my lips. I knew it was more than medicine, more than luck. I had been sent back. For the first few days, speaking was difficult, my body exhausted from its ordeal. But my mind was vibrantly alive, replaying every detail of my journey into the light, every word, every vision imparted by the divine. The contrast between that realm of ineffable peace and the sterile, beeping reality of the ICU was stark, almost schizophrenic. How could I bridge that gap? How could I begin to articulate the inexpressible? When I finally found the strength to speak more than a few words, I started with Linda. Late one night, when the hospital was quiet, and the only sound was the rhythmic sigh of my ventilator, I began to tell her. My voice was weak, raspy, but the words tumbled out, a torrent of awe, wonder, and profound conviction. I told her about leaving my body at the fire scene, about the darkness, and then the glorious, welcoming light. I described the overwhelming love of God, a love that was personal, unconditional, and utterly transformative. I spoke of the life review, the painful clarity of my shortcomings, but also the gentle, non-judgmental understanding with which it was presented. And I shared the core message he had given me, the message about love being the ultimate reality, the true purpose of our existence. Linda listened in stunned silence, tears streaming down her face, her hand gripping mine tightly. She didn't interrupt, didn't question, didn't express disbelief. When I finished, voice raw with emotion and exhaustion, she simply whispered, "Tom, I always knew there was more. I felt it. But this is, I believe you." Her acceptance was a profound gift, the first anchor in my new, disorienting reality. Sharing it with my firefighting crew, my brothers in arms, was different. They were overjoyed at my survival, their relief palpable. But when I tentatively tried to explain what had happened to me beyond the physical trauma, their reactions ranged from polite, concerned silence to well-meaning attempts to rationalize it as a trauma-induced hallucination. "Chief, you went through hell," one of them said, patting my arm. "The mind does strange things when it's starved of oxygen." I understood. I would have said the same thing myself before. I didn't push it. The seeds had to be planted gently. The real struggle began as I slowly recovered, as the raw physical pain began to subside, replaced by the deeper, more complex challenge of integrating this monumental spiritual experience into the fabric of my everyday life. The world looked different. People looked different. My priorities, my ambitions, my very understanding of what it meant to be alive had been irrevocably altered. The desire to return to firefighting, once the consuming passion of my life, had vanished. Not because I was afraid, but because the nature of the fires I now felt called to fight had changed. The mission he had given me, to share his message of love, hope, and the eternal nature of life, burned within me with a quiet but intense urgency. The path ahead was unclear, daunting. How does a fire captain become a messenger of divine love? But amidst the uncertainty, his promise echoed, "I will be with you." And in that promise, I found all the courage I needed. My physical recovery was long and arduous, a stark reminder of the veil between worlds I had so dramatically pierced. But with each small victory, sitting up, taking a few steps, breathing without the constant ache, my spiritual resolve solidified. The memories of the light, of his presence, of the profound truths he had imparted, remained as vivid and potent as if they had happened only moments ago. They were not fading dreams, but the new, unshakable bedrock of my reality. The decision to not return to active firefighting was one of the hardest, yet most inevitable, I had ever made. The department, my crew, the rhythm of the station house. It had been my life for over 3 decades. Explaining my reasons was challenging. How do you tell men who live and breathe the tangible heroism of battling physical flames that you now feel called to address unseen, spiritual conflagrations in the human heart? Some understood, or at least respected my decision, having witnessed the profound change in me. Others were bewildered, perhaps even a little hurt. But I knew, with a certainty that transcended all external validation, that my path had irrevocably shifted. My new fire station became wherever people were willing to listen. I started small, sharing my story with friends, with my church group, with anyone who expressed a genuine curiosity. I recounted my journey, the chaos of the fire, the moment of death, the out-of-body experience, the transition through darkness into the ineffable light, the overwhelming love of God, the life review, and the core message of love, forgiveness, and eternal life. I spoke not as an authority, but as a humble witness, a man who had been given an extraordinary glimpse behind the curtain of ordinary reality. The reactions, as he had forewarned, were diverse. Many were deeply moved, some to tears, confessing their own spiritual hunger, their own quiet questions about life, death, and what lies beyond. My story seemed to validate their deepest intuitions, to offer a tangible hope that resonated with their souls. They asked earnest questions, not about theological intricacies, but about the feeling of his love, the nature of that other realm, the lessons I had learned. For these individuals, my testimony was like water in a parched land. Others listened with polite skepticism, their expressions betraying a struggle to reconcile my extraordinary claims with their rational, material worldview. They would often revert to explanations of trauma, hypoxia, or psychological coping mechanisms. I never argued. I had learned in the light that true knowing comes from the heart, not from intellectual debate. I simply shared my experience as truthfully as I could, planting seeds and trusting that he would tend to their growth if the soil was receptive. I began to write, to document my experience in detail, not for fame or fortune, but as a way to process it more deeply myself, and to create a more permanent record for those who might find solace or inspiration in it. The words often felt inadequate, like trying to describe a symphony to someone who has never heard music, but I persevered, guided by an inner sense that this was part of my mission. My relationships changed. With Linda, my wife, our bond deepened in ways I hadn't thought possible. She became my staunchest supporter, my sounding board, the one who reminded me of his promises when my own human doubts occasionally flickered. With my children, conversations took on a new depth as we explored questions of faith and purpose that had rarely surfaced before. Even my interactions with strangers felt different. I found myself looking beyond superficial appearances, trying to see the divine spark he had shown me exists within every soul. My priorities underwent a radical reordering. The pursuit of material comfort, professional advancement, the everyday anxieties that had once seemed so important, they all receded into the background, replaced by a singular focus: to live a life that reflected the love and truth I had been shown, and to share that message in whatever way I could. The world, with all its beauty and its brokenness, now appeared as a vast classroom, a place for souls to learn and grow. The fires I saw were no longer just physical, but the fires of fear, of anger, of division, of despair that raged in human hearts and societies. And my role, I understood, was to be a source of living water, offering comfort, hope, and the promise of a love that could extinguish even the fiercest flames. The journey was not without its challenges. There were days of profound weariness, moments when the sheer magnitude of the task felt overwhelming, times when I faced ridicule or dismissal. But in those moments, I would close my eyes, reconnect with the memory of His light, His love, His voice, and His unwavering promise, "I am with you always." And the strength, the peace, the renewed sense of purpose would invariably return. My life is now a testament to His grace. I am no longer just Tom Callahan, retired fire captain. I am Thomas, a witness, a messenger, a soul forever changed by a journey to the heart of God and back, entrusted with a simple yet world-transforming truth. Love is real, life is eternal, and we are all infinitely cherished. And that is a message I will continue to share, with every breath He gives me, until I am called home once more. This time, I pray to stay.